Kyle Busch finally has his 200th NASCAR win. Can we please shut up about it now? What is happening, ladies and germs? This is the PackerMan, and welcome to this week's edition of Final Analysis. Well, this weekend was a massive pile of crap, and it's not because Kyle Busch won the Cup race and finally got his 200th win. The racing this weekend was putrid. It was putrid dog shit. And of course, it was kind of a harbinger of things to come when you have a debacle in qualifying for the Cup race. Man, there's so much crap that happened this weekend that it just paints NASCAR in a very poor light, in my opinion. So let's get into it. First off, something that I saw on their YouTube channel. So I caught this on my feed, and it was so weird that I actually have a clip of it that I'm going to play up in one of the corners of the screen. And it was basically just a crap ton of uploads, and some of them had it looked like hastily typed in video titles, and I'm just kind of like sitting there like, what the hell is going on? I mean, this wasn't like a few uploads. This was like hundreds. I mean, there had to have been 100 or 200 videos that were uploaded in like an instant, and it's just like that were live on their channel for a bit. I mean, when I refreshed it a little bit later, they were all gone, but still, I'm just sitting there like, what was that all about? That was weird as all hell. Like, what was up with that? And then it only got weirder from there because qualifying was a major debacle. Apparently, in the second and third rounds of qualifying, nobody wanted to go out on the track. They were all just kind of just chilling right at the exit of pit road. Because of how the draft works with this new aero package, nobody wanted to be the first one to go out. So, everybody was basically waiting until the last moment to set a time. And as a result, Austin Dillon got the best time in round 2. And then everybody waited so long in the final round of qualifying that nobody managed to get to the line to be able to set a time. So as a result, Austin Dillon won the pole by default, which is pretty dumb considering that nobody set a time in round 3. So obviously that caused quite a stir on social media, and Scott Miller himself said, yeah, that's not happening again. So they're going to be making some tweaks to qualifying, and they said it would probably start at Texas for sure. So right off the bat, just two very weird instances, and we hadn't even gotten to the racing yet.
It's going to be one of those days.
So let's start with the Xfinity race. The Xfinity race was god awful. And that's even if you take out of the equation that Kyle Busch didn't win, because his pit crew basically choked late in the race. Kyle Busch was able to get back to second, but was never able to catch back up to Cole Custer, who was California dreaming at his home racetrack and got his third career win. So good for him. But other than that race literally put me to sleep. I mean, oh my God. I mean, I actually laid down and took a nap after that race was over because it was so ungodly boring. But I was hoping that the Cup Series race would give us something good to talk about due to the new aero package. So let's get into that. This was a big old mixed bag. The point of the aero package was to promote closer racing and a lot more passes. One thing I certainly noticed from this race was the fact that on the restarts, it's pretty damn crazy. It definitely seems like, on fresh tires, on restarts, this aero package can definitely produce some damn good racing, as I'm soon going to talk about. And you would think with a track as big as Fontana, where the draft does come into play, even in previous packages, You would think with this aero package, the racing would be absolutely crazy. We would see high amounts of pure lead changes and just lead changes in general. Well, the pure lead change count was definitely decent. There were 7 pure lead changes during the race. And at the beginning of the race, I thought, damn, we could hit double digits in this race. Yeah, that was wishful thinking. But let's go ahead and get into the particulars of this race. Austin Dillon, of course, won the pole. But it was not all hunky-dory for him in this race. And it wasn't just because of what happened on track. No, apparently he came down with some kind of sickness yesterday. And apparently it had gotten worse today. So that's what, the 3rd driver this year that has had some kind of illness during the race weekend. You have Brad Keselowski at Vegas coming down with the stomach flu. And you had Jimmy Johnson, who got sick the previous week at Phoenix. And then this week, Austin Dillon gets sick. Is there some kind of sickness going around the garage right now? Because that's 3 drivers in the span of, 5 races? That have all gotten sick for one reason or another? That's kind of crazy. Dillon does start from the pole. So the stage breakdown for this race was stages 1 and 2, 60 laps. Stage 3, 80 laps. So, of course, we had a crazy start. Denny Hamlin, who started 6th, was in the lead by the end of lap 1. And he led lap 1. He started 6th. Damn. Then we had our first pure lead change on lap 3 when Eric Almirola took the lead. He had a good short run car. So we had some good racing for 2nd around this point between the 11, the 18, the 17, and the 3. There were some good mid-pack battles as well, again, during the early portion of the runs. And then our 2nd and 3rd pure lead change would come nearly on back-to-back laps. Lap 11, Denny Hamlin took the lead from Almirola, and then Kyle Busch took the lead on lap 13. Things started to settle down a bit. I'm just going to put to you this way. The first half of stage 1 was pretty damn awesome because we had 3 pure lead changes right off the bat, and I'm thinking to myself, damn, if this is the way it's going to be, this is going to be one hell of a race. And that's what's so disappointing about this race. It got off to a great start. The start of this race was awesome. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I'm hoping this is what we're going to see for the rest of the race. It's not what we got. Oh, man. That's what makes it so disappointing is the fact that, this race got off to such a good start, and then it just descends into total crap. There were some bright points to this race, but, the majority of this race was garbage. Another guy who was coming towards the front was Martin Truex Jr. He had to start 27th, and he was rip-roaring towards the front. He definitely had a good car early on. Ryan Blaney kicked off the brown and green flag pit stops on lap 27. Kyle Busch eventually cycles back around to the lead. Bowyer started reporting a smell in his car, probably due to the fact that his engine was going sour right at the beginning of the race, and it would keep doing that, and eventually it would put him out of the race. Then we got our first caution on lap 55, only 3 cautions this week. Austin Dillon loses the right rear tire. Initially, a lot of people thought it was an engine, and certainly from the camera's vantage point, it did look like an engine, but then he came around to the pit lane, and it showed that he actually lost the right rear tire, so that was good news for him. And I think he actually recovered to a top 10 finish. Almost everyone comes in for service. Kyle Busch wins the race off pit road. Denny Hamlin decides to stay out for some weird reason, even though he was up near the front. It did work out for him somewhat. But Stenhouse and Bowyer also stay out, which kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit, because it's like, why would Stenhouse stay out? And then, of course, Bowyer, who had the ailing engine, it's like, why would those two stay out? So there would be a 1-lap shootout for the stage win. Hamlin leads. Kyle Busch basically blew by him on the restart going into turn 1, and then Stenhouse would spin in turn 1 to bring out the second caution on lap 60. He got up into the 20 of Eric Jones, who made one hell of a good save. And then several cars made contact trying to avoid the incident. Truex got punched in the right rear by Kyle Larson, which damaged both of their cars. Truex in particular was hurt the worst because that right rear was so aero-dependent, and that basically ruined the handling on his car, and it took him quite a while for him to get back to the top 10. But Kyle Busch wins stage 1. So the first half of the stage was great. Second half, not so much. And I was thinking to myself, well, it's the first stage. Almost every single race this year, the first stage was kind of I mean, this was probably better than a few of the other first stages that we've seen this year. So I was like, well, hopefully things will improve. Nope, it was all downhill from here. Another thing about the Eric Jones save, Fox didn't even mention it or show a replay until midway through the second stage.
What the f***, man?
And that's another thing I want to touch on. Fox's broadcasts suck. Like, they miss so much important stuff, and not only that, they like to go to commercial break at the worst possible times. And I've touched up on this before, and it pisses me off so damn much. When there's an obvious fight for the lead that's going to happen, they go to a commercial, and in particular, I said that there were 3 pure lead changes in stage 1. 2 of them happened during a commercial break. I mean, like, what happened to the days of holding off on a commercial until the battle for the lead sorts itself out? What the hell happened to that? Well, instead, they go to a freaking commercial, and 2 of the 3 pure lead changes in stage 1, we didn't even get to see. And then they didn't even show any goddamn replays of the lead changes. Like, what the hell is Fox thinking? Their broadcasts suck ass. I swear to God, it is so frustrating sometimes. I mean, especially when they go to commercial when the battle for the lead is developing. It's like, are you stupid? How stupid can you be? I mean, you're trying to promote your racing product as the best in the world in their mind, and you're not going to show one of the defining things that you're trying to promote is great battling for the lead. You're going to go to a freaking commercial in the middle of it? It's just so counterintuitive. Yeah, NASCAR is not the only problem here. Fox just sucks when it comes to their broadcasting. Tell you what, NBC did a hell of a lot better job when they took over the broadcast last year, and it showed. Anyways, moving on to stage number 2. Kyle Busch leads the start of stage 2. We have a rush hour type restart where everybody's going 5 wide down the backstretch, and it's like, okay. So we get our 4th and 5th pure lead changes right near each other once again. Joey Logano got by Kyle Busch to take the lead for a brief time for a 4th pure lead change, and then Kyle Busch took it right back 2 laps later for a 5th pure lead change. And that would be the last pure lead change until very late in the race. We were stuck at 5 for a long time. Daniel Hemrick loses the right rear tire after hitting the wall, but the race stays green. And this is one of the prevailing themes that I think we're going to be seeing in 2019. And I tweeted this out during the... It just seems like NASCAR has these certain themes that we seem to see during the season. 2018 was the year of the big 3. It was either Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, or Kevin Harvick in victory lane seemingly every single week. This year, it's looking like it's going to be Gibbs versus Penske. Why do I say that? Daytona 500, Denny Hamlin is the winner. Gibbs car. Atlanta, the winner was Brad Keselowski. Penske car. Las Vegas, Joey Logano. Penske car. Last week at Phoenix, Kyle Busch. Gibbs car. And then, as we're going to get to here in a bit, Kyle Busch wins at California. Gibbs car. It's been Gibbs, Penske, Gibbs, so far this year. So, I think it's pretty obvious right here at the beginning, it's going to be a Gibbs versus Penske type of year. I mean, we had a great battle for second at one point between all 3 of the Penske cars. But once things settled down, this is when the race got pretty damn bad. Like, this was putridly bad at this point in the race. So, green flag pit stops begin on lap 91 for the 11, the 42, the 19, and the 21, kicking things off. Kyle Busch was the last to pit with 28 to go in stage 2. Reached the halfway point of the race, and this race it's gotten really bad at this point. There is nothing going on. By the end of the stage, third place is over 10 seconds back, and it's just like, NASCAR has been promoting the hell out of this new aero package. It definitely delivered, I think, at Vegas and at Atlanta, but at California, not the case. And I even tweeted this out too near the end of the race. This was a massive disappointment. So Kyle Busch wins stage 2. Stage 2 sucked major ass. And I was hoping that, hopefully stage 3 would get better, especially since Kyle Busch got nabbed for speeding. So he would have to go to the tail of the field. And I'm like, okay, maybe we'll see some good things now. Nope. Keselowski leads the start of stage number 3, and you would think, well, we're going to start seeing some more pure lead changes now that Kyle Busch is back in the pack. Nope, none whatsoever at this point. Had a great battle for third for a bit between the 22, the 42, the 12, the 9, the 1, and the 3. I mean, that was interesting for a couple laps. So like I said, there were some bright points in this race, just not as many as I think a lot of us hoped for. So around 40 laps to go, and once again, kind of like the Xfinity series yesterday, I could start feeling myself nodding off, and it's just like, oh my god, this race has gotten so bad. I mean, we were in 2 out of 10 territory at this point. So Paul Menard comes down pit road with 40 laps to go. Everybody starts coming in. And you would have thought that being 8 seconds back like he was, Kyle Busch and his crew chief would have said, let's short pit and see what happens. But they elected to stay out and try to run it out, which was a bit of a risk too. I mean, it's risky either way, but they decided, we're going to stay out and try to run this thing out through the fuel window. It was ultimately the move that won them the race, in my opinion. Because the third caution would come out on lap 164 when Bubba Wallace cuts a left front tire, and it completely destroys his left front quarter panel, and debris goes flying out onto the racetrack. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my god, that just won him the race. Because Kyle Busch hadn't pitted at that point, and considering how abrasive California is, everybody was going to be coming in for tires, especially those guys that were still in the lead lap. There were only 6 cars in the lead lap at that point. So Kyle Busch, he was in the catbird seat at this point, because he was going to come in, have the freshest tires. Everyone else who had pitted, they were going to have to take the wave around. So Kyle Busch was basically going to have the freshest tires of anybody. So 5 of the 6 lead lap cars come down pit road for 4 tires. Ryan Blaney decides to stay out. And I'm just kind of like, huh? You're not going to come down pit road for fresh rubber when there's only 6 cars on the lead lap? Are you crazy? And Kurt Busch would get the free pass, and then everybody else would have to stay out and take the wave around. So at this point, it's kind of like, well, it seems like the only guys that could keep up with Kyle were the Penske boys, in particular Logano and Keselowski. So it's kind of like, okay, let's wait and see what happens. So we have our final restart. Blaney leads on the restart, of course, and he just gets blown by going into turn 1. Keselowski was giving Kyle Busch a pretty good bump draft. They basically blew by him. Keselowski then gets a run around Kyle Busch for the lead, because Busch's car doesn't get going for a couple laps, so Kes was able to take over the lead. And then Joey Logano would also get by Kyle for a bit, as well as Kevin Harvick. So Kyle Busch is back to 4th at this point. Again, it takes a couple laps for Kyle Busch's car to come in at this point. Once he got going, he was not going to be stopped. So Logano takes over the lead after a great battle with Brad Keselowski. Of course, those two have had great battles many times this year already. I mean, at Atlanta, they were having a great battle until Logano, I think, had either a cut tire or a loose wheel. Either way, it ended his shot to win. Then, of course, Vegas a couple weeks ago, they had that great battle at the end. And then, of course, here we are again. And they were really going at each other. Logano got down to the inside of Keselowski, and they were really playing some chicken with each other when Logano was swinging down low, and Keselowski was trying to swing down with him to basically try to get a side draft off of him. Of course, it kind of ruined their entry into turn 3. Logano did come out with the lead, so we got our 6th pure lead change on lap 174. Then Kyle Busch got them both in turn 1 and 2, because that battling really slowed them up, and Kyle Busch had a full hit of steam and basically got them both in turns 1 and 2 on the very next lap for our 7th and final pure lead change of the day. And once again, it was another bright spot in this race, because for a couple laps we had a great battle for the lead. I mean, again, this race had its moments, but it was one of those races where parts of this race were really, really good, and then there was a lot of this race that was really, really bad. And when it was bad, it was really bad. But once Kyle got the lead, that was pretty much all she wrote, because he basically drove away. You know, he didn't drive away to like a mammoth lead. I think he was basically pedaling it. He was holding something back just in case something happened at the end of the race, in which case he would have to pour the jets on again. But Logano couldn't get close enough again to challenge Kyle Busch. And Kyle Busch wins the Auto Club 400 in dominating fashion. And he finally scores his quote-unquote 200th NASCAR win. And again, there are people out, you know, on Twitter once again, including David Land. Of course, last week I told him to just enough with it already. But of course, he does it again. He's like, we have a new king. And it's just like, dude, come on. I know you're supposed to be trolling, but again, you need to learn when enough is enough. You're old enough to know better. It's gotten ridiculous at this point. I mean, it's not bad enough that Fox and NASCAR have been shoving that crap down our throats for the last month. But of course, you know, people like you are taking it to a whole nother level, you know, doing your trolling crap on Twitter, and it's just like, enough already. We get the point. Okay? There's no denying that Kyle Busch is one of the best drivers, definitely of this generation. I mean, one thing I do want to touch upon, when he was back in traffic and trying to fight his way back forward after the speeding penalty, some of the moves that Kyle was pulling off were just, wait, what? I mean, there was this one move that he put on 4 cars down the front stretch where he had to fit into basically like a small gap in between 2 cars. Then he swung down in front of another gap and passed all 4 of those cars down the front stretch. And I'm just kind of like, damn, that was pretty impressive. Trust me, I'm not denying that Kyle Busch is one hell of a race car driver. I mean, he's won back-to-back events. You know, I don't think there's any question that Kyle is one hell of a race car driver, and I've said that time and time again. There are times I don't like his attitude, you know, all that good stuff, but I'm not denying the fact that he is one hell of a race car driver. I mean, this was his 53rd career Cup Series victory. Like I've said numerous times already this season, there's not a whole hell of a lot of drivers who can say they've won more than 50 races in their career. His ability behind the wheel is not in question. It's just that I think people are way overblowing this 200 win thing, and in particular those that are trying to compare it to Richard Petty. Stop with the comparisons already, okay? What Richard did and what Kyle has done, they're 2 completely different avenues, which is why I'm grateful that Mike Joy basically came on and said, yeah, you can't compare the 2. Basically saying you can't compare the 2. Even Kyle Busch himself has said, you cannot compare what I've done to what Richard has done. So stop doing it. Because it honestly makes you look ridiculous when you do it. I mean, it's all fine and dandy that Kyle Busch has those 200 wins, and, you know, good for him to do it. And if he wants to enjoy that accomplishment, so be it. He's put in the time, he's put in the effort. You know, and that's all fine and dandy, but, you know, what he needs to do is he needs to stop going to the lower tier series. There's not, like I said before, and as well, there's nothing for him to prove in the Xfinity and Truck Series. He's already got the most career wins ever in both of those series. There is literally no reason for him to go down to those series anymore. Period. And that's just the bottom line. But Kyle Busch gets his 53rd career win. And this race was a massive disappointment. It sucked. And it is such a massive disappointment because it, like I said before, it got off to a great start. It really did. Those first 20 laps were awesome. I mean, we had 3 pure lead changes right off the bat. You know, first 13 laps of the race. Of course, 2 of them we didn't get to see because Fox was being a bunch of morons. But nonetheless, the beginning of this race was awesome, but eventually it just devolved into a big old pile of crap. This was easily the worst race of the year so far. I mean, I know we're only 5 races in, and we got off to such a pretty solid start. The first 3 races were pretty good. I mean, all scoring above a 7, but then Phoenix, you know, was kind of eh. And then this race, while it had its moments, when the race was bad, it was bad. It was real bad. It was, I want to just lay down and take a nap type of bad. And that really sucks, because if I would have figured that if there was a track that this aero package would benefit from, it was Fontana. It was the Auto Club Speedway. Other than the restarts, it just did not deliver. So my final rating for the Auto Club 400 at the Auto Club Speedway, the best I can give it is a 3 out of 10. And that's about all I can give it. I mean, it definitely had its moments, but the rest of the race was just not interesting to me. And it was a massive disappointment after having such expectations. I mean, after the races we saw at Atlanta and Vegas, I was like, you know, maybe Fontana would continue that. And that was just not the case whatsoever. So it was a massive, massive disappointment. But there is an upside. Next week is Martinsville, our first short track of the year. And Martinsville typically gives us some damn good races. Although the spring race last year didn't really fulfill that obligation. Although it did go, like this race, it got off to a great start and then it just went, meow. Hopefully that won't be the case this time around. So that's pretty much going to do it. As I don't know if you can hear it, but it's starting to get it's raining and snowing at the same freaking time. And we're only, what, a couple days from spring? I mean, look at this crap. It's raining and snowing at the same time. Ugh. I'm ready for it to warm up. I'm telling you right now. But, yeah. That's pretty much going to do it for me here on Final Analysis for this week. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, this is the PackerMan signing out.